everybody, and welcome to Project HR, a podcast dedicated to building better workplaces. Project HR is brought to you by Projections, an IRI company. IRI helps organizations navigate workplace challenges, improve employee engagement and productivity, manage labor relations, and implement effective communication strategies to achieve their goals. For more information, you can visit Projections online at projectionsinc.com. I am Jennifer Oraqua, Director of Business Development for IRI, and your host for today's episode of Project HR. They're calling it the Great Resignation. Large numbers of workers are choosing to walk away from their jobs rather than return to their pre-pandemic workplaces. According to the Department of Labor, a record 4 million people decided to leave their jobs in April of this year alone, placing job vacancies at a 20-year high. And Monster.com reports that as many as 95% of workers are currently considering changing jobs. So what's behind this mass exodus, and what does it mean for businesses moving forward? My guest today has some thoughts on that. I'm joined today by Steve Dion, founder and CEO of Dion Leadership, a company dedicated to helping companies build strong leaders that create even stronger organizational cultures. Steve, thanks so much for joining me today on Project HR.
Thanks for having me on your show, Jennifer.
Sure. So, Steve, you've held HR leadership roles in 2 Fortune 500 companies, and you are the CHRO for a publicly traded financial services organization. So you understand kind of the ebb and flow of talent. Is this Great Resignation something that companies legitimately need to be concerned about?
Absolutely. Over the last 3 decades, I've really seen my share of challenges in the labor market going up and down with finding the right gifted employee. And, it's really challenging to match the right worker in the best of times. But in these times right now, it is quite a problem.
For sure. And this comes on the heels of some pretty serious talent shortages, leading up to 2020. I mean, even in 2019, there was one survey that I saw that reported that 69% of employers in the United States were having difficulty filling jobs. Do you think this reality helps set the stage for what we're seeing now?
I think there were already some societal and economic factors at play here. There were already about 10,000 baby boomers, turning 65 every single day.
Right.
And retirements were outpacing growth. And there was already seen to be about a 5 million worker shortage to begin with. But then this, pandemic has created a whole new problem here. So, Gen Zs prioritize personal and work differently than many other workers had. So we're now seeing that it's a big challenge.
Yeah, for sure. When do you think this Great Resignation or this mindset around it began? Did it start during quarantine? Did people start reconsidering? Or was it really when businesses began opening up? That's when we started seeing it in the news, of course, but did it really begin before that?
Well, like so many other things, I think the signs of what was happening really weren't there until it was obvious. An iceberg analogy is a great example here. So, this obstruction of talent was happening and building under the water, but we weren't seeing it until the pandemic created more havoc. The gig economy has already been something that's been written up for a decade now. There's a lot of workers that wanted to be freelancers. And why do they want to do that? They wanted to have more flexibility in their jobs. Well, now after this pandemic, people are finding themselves saying, I really, really am going to make life choices to live out the job that I want to have and the life I want to have. So shifting worker expectations is huge. And this came up because of the quarantine.
Yeah. Makes sense. And the person who coined the term "the Great Resignation" is a professor over at Texas A&M, Anthony Klotz, and he said how we spent our time before the pandemic may not be how we want to spend our time after, suggesting that we've kind of undergone a collective reevaluation of our own life circumstances in the wake of the pandemic. Do you think this introspection, the self-analysis, is at the heart of the exodus?
Well, I think employees were exposed to a new way of working during this pandemic, and it showed them what they liked and didn't like about it, frankly. And equally as important, it showed their employer and showed them that they could show their employer that they could do work in a very different way. So this really, I like to say the toothpaste has been squeezed out of the tube and there's no way to put it back in.
Right. Yeah. Do you think people are looking for more meaning in their work? I mean, are we not just seeking growth, but also fulfillment?
I think it's a combination of things. One is, long, stressful commutes, sleepless nights, wasted meetings, political games and organizations. Workers are taking stock of what that means and what they want in a job. And they do want meaning in a job. And hopefully we can talk today a little bit about what does an organization do to both balance somebody's need for flexibility, but need for belonging. So that's a fine line to walk.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've touched on a whole bunch of things. You touched on, the gig economy, the stress of having to go to an office every day. What other things do you think have contributed to this movement at this point?
Well, I think wellness and well-being have been an important factor that have been one of those iceberg items that are building for a while. You can
Hmm.
scroll on social media and you hear people talk about meditation and spending more time with loved ones
Hmm.
and equanimity and practice and balance. And people want that and they want that in their jobs. And this pandemic said, I can't wait to have that a future goal. I need to make that happen today.
Mm.
And then second, I think technology advancements have contributed to this as well. We've
Hmm.
had video calling and screen sharing technology for a while now, but it's become mainstream. And somebody with a click of a button can be in a virtual conference room doing what they could have done in person with people around the globe. And they're saying,
Hmm.
why? I don't need to get on an airplane, fly somewhere, spend a couple days away from my family to have this meeting.
The ways in which we lead have kind of changed during the pandemic. Do you think that that's also contributing to people thinking, maybe I don't want this 9 to 5 anymore?
Absolutely. Leaders are having the same personal revelations as every worker is. So they are approaching jobs in their job in a different way, and they're
Mm-hmm.
approaching the way in which they're leading others in a different way and showing a little bit more compassion and understanding for what it means to juggle work family relationships and what it means to ask somebody to do something after hours and the impact that it has. And I think that's an important part of what we're seeing in terms of the new employment construct here.
All right, we're going to take a quick sponsorship break right now, but when we return, Steve and I are going to discuss how employers can retain current employees and attract new ones, even during the Great Resignation. So stay with us.
Hi, thanks for listening. And also thanks to Proofbox for supporting this week's episode of Project HR. Proofbox is like Netflix for labor relations. Every video, every resource, immediately at your fingertips. Instantly stream the employee communication titles you need and allow members of your leadership team to do the same. Learn more at unionproof.com/proofbox.
And I'm back here on Project HR with Steve Dion, the founder and CEO of Dion Leadership. And Steve and I are talking about the Great Resignation, a phenomenon in which many employees are quitting their jobs en masse. So, Steve, a lot of companies may be reading about the Great Resignation. And of course, some have lost employees to it already. Let's talk about how to stop the bleeding. What are we doing right now as leaders to avoid loss of talent during this time?
Well, I recently wrote an article for Chief Executive urging CEOs not to squander this moment. I fear that many leaders are going to want to go back to what they had before, and that is not going to work. I
Mm.
really do believe in the reports that are showing that up to 40% of workers are watching their employers closely and are considering making job changes.
Hmm.
And so in that article, I really offered four specific kind of broad suggestions of things you can do. First one is I think you should not take a one size fits all approach to jobs and people. I
Hmm.
know that organizations like equity and they want fairness, but I think it's really important that they realize that each person is an individual. And if they want to keep them employed in their organization, they have to treat them as such and figure out how to manage complexity on their end and not put everybody in a common box.
Mm.
A second item is to create a really clear point of view and back that with process and data. And frankly, weed out some old thinking. I think they need to rethink when, where, and how work happens.
Hmm.
And that is going to be a critical element for organizations to be successful in the future. A third item we talked about there was to listen to employees and ensure that leaders create a two-way dialogue.
Hmm.
They might have to say, no, I need you in the office. We have to do this. But people need to be listened to, be heard, and help manage somebody's stress. And training managers right now on how to work and lead in a hybrid environment is really important. We're
Hmm.
finding that leaders are lost in knowing how to manage, how to reward, recognize, engage people when they're not physically seeing somebody, not able to walk down the hall and have conversations. And so, I think really important with this too is just overall assume good intent. Don't we
Hmm.
all deserve a bit of grace these days? And
Hmm.
employees need to be trusted and feel that when they're working at home or when they say they need time off or if they need something else in their job, that the organization is going to give it to them. So creating a culture that's going to really allow a healthy hybrid work environment to happen, not just tolerate it until we can get back to where we were.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as Winston Churchill once famously said, never let a good crisis go to waste. So what is it that leaders need to be doing? What are employees looking for right now?
First and foremost, employees are looking for flexibility in their work. I think that is the new currency. They want flexibility in when they work, where they work, and how they work. I just recently read a study that said 18% of employees are satisfied with their work-life balance. Only
Wow.
18%.
Yeah.
So compassion for well-being is really important right now. And being able to allow, changes in policies are important, like PTO time, mental health days. People want greater flexibility that way, but they also want flexibility in terms of what they're working on, how they work, and they want a leader that's going to help them navigate work-life balance.
Sure. And some of us, leadership is offering higher than usual wages, signing bonuses, perks. Are any of these financial incentives actually working?
Many of our clients are telling me stories about having to give 4, sometimes 5 offers for employment for one job and getting turned down right now. And
Wow.
the candidate is saying, I have an offer with 20% higher salary than what you're offering, an immediate sign-on bonus, and more importantly, a commitment to work in a very different way. And so organizations are really rethinking what it means to align a job package that's going to work for somebody. I don't have a crystal ball for knowing how this is going to shake out, but I do believe that this is going to result in some wage acceleration across the board, but also in helping to rethink what a worker wants in their job.
So what can I do to attract talent in this environment? So let's just say I don't have the financial wherewithal to offer big financial incentives to workers. What can I do to get the best talent?
Well, flexibility, as I mentioned, is a really important element here. Being able to say, I am open for going down a path with you to figure out how you can work in a way that will work for your life and your goals. I recently read a study that said that 50% of Gen X's and millennials surveyed said they would give up about 10% of their wages to work virtually and work anywhere.
Yeah.
So that, if you don't have a lot of money as an organization, you can't put big financial incentives. If you can be that caring employer, you have strong leaders that will say, I'm willing to work with you and help you think about this. I think you can come out of the other side of this really strong.
So clearly, it's a job seekers market right now, but are there opportunities within this Great Resignation for us as employers as well?
Yes, I think there is some good news here. The world is getting smaller. So, if you can approach your candidate pool in a new and creative way, you can expand beyond the 50-mile drive time of your corporate office to, the world, and being able to find outstanding candidates that could work. I know that's not a possibility for every job that's out there,
Sure.
but where you can, I think thinking a little bit differently is really important. Being able to turn that 2-hour-a-day drive time into productivity is huge for organizations.
Yeah.
And reducing costs of office space and some other physical items are really important, of course. And then last, I think, the other maybe not as obvious item is from a change management perspective, we are all unfrozen. Everybody's open for new ways of thinking about doing things. So organizations that want to have a more productive, stronger, healthier, different culture, this is the time for them to focus on that.
All right, Steve, I want to go back to something that you and I talked about a minute ago, the steps we could take to stop a loss of talent. Are there also steps we can take to attract new talent?
I think the way to attract new talent today is to get creative and explore options. I'm encouraging organizations to open up their candidate pool, consider different candidates, consider having dialogue with people that aren't in the traditional place you would look for employment. Interview people, see what comes out of that, see what jobs might look like, have conversations with your employees in asking them about work and where work could be done and how work could be different. If you split some jobs into 2, who knows how many more people you'd have options for example.
And I was going to ask you, do we need to lower our standards as far as hiring? But maybe we really need to expand our perspective. What do you think about that? Like as leaders, do we need to just look at people differently than we did before?
Well, there are challenges up and down the entire org chart of hiring talent. Hiring frontline workers is absolutely challenging today. And somebody saying, I can't juggle uh, my kids at home and have a job that is $12 an hour. It's not worth it to me. All the way through senior management roles where someone's saying, I want to rethink how much time I have to dedicate to this all-in job to be able to be around for caring for my parents, for being around for my kids. So it's a different phenomena, I think, across the entire employment spectrum, but allowing for creativity in exploring who in your organization might be able to take a more senior role. One of the things that we're tracking is seeing that organizations are promoting people from within, and those lower level roles are having more trouble getting filled because the next level up is being filled by those workers. So there may be some people that could take on a mid-level management role that you wouldn't have thought of otherwise.
Yeah, it sounds like almost that the Great Resignation is an opportunity to rethink our talent needs. Like maybe we need to restructure things, just look at people differently than we had before.
Well, and if we just talk to our workers, if we say, this is a problem, you help me think through this. The people closest to the work know the most about it. Employees might say, we don't need to backfill that job. Or if we put these two things together, it could look like this. And that could open up another option for us. We could bring in technology. We could outsource this to a firm that has a team of folks because we only need 10 hours a month on this role. So I think thinking about labor is not just a person in a seat, but the ability to get work done through a network is something that organizations are going to be faced to consider.
Yeah, I love that. Those are all brilliant ideas. Steve, we're going to take some time out for a quick break, but we'll be right back after this. You're listening to the Project HR podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Oraqua, and my guest today is Steve Dion, the founder and CEO of Dion Leadership. We are back. We're talking about the Great Resignation. And Steve, I realize that no one can predict the future. You said earlier you don't have a crystal ball, but particularly during this bizarre time. But if you were pressed to make a prediction, how long do you think that this Great Resignation and this talent shortage might last? If everyone's holding out for their dream job, they eventually have to find employment somewhere, right?
You're right. I can't predict the future. But I would say that I expect this to last for a few years. I don't see this settling anytime soon. As we talked about earlier, there was already a looming talent shortage with retirements and with the changing factors of workers that are joining the workforce and how much they want to work and where they want to work. This is definitely a buyer's labor market. And so I think it's something that organizations need to have concerted efforts and plans for, and not just leave it in the HR department's role, but to escalate this as a strategic business imperative and start to think more creatively about how work gets done in your organization.
For sure. And we've all heard the saying that people don't quit jobs, they quit bosses. I suspect this is definitely true in this current climate. Nobody's going to put up with a leader that's not doing a good job. So your company, Dion Leadership, is all about building stronger leaders and healthier work cultures by way of that leadership. Can you tell us a little bit more about the training and insight that Dion Leadership offers?
Oh, thanks for asking. So, Dion Leadership helps organizations build strong leaders and even healthier organizational cultures. So we have a team of about 60 really extraordinary coaches and consultants that are looking to craft practical leadership solutions and do training, management development programs, high potential programs, first level supervisor programs, individual coaching, talent assessment. Recently, a lot of work in the team development space, teams wanting to kind of hit the reset button and build some camaraderie again, and organizational development consulting work. And then over this last year, we've really spent a lot of time talking about work-life alignment and how to support hybrid work environments and support new ways of working.
So, Steve, I know you offer webinars often, and we've even participated in a couple of those here at IRI. So do any of your webinars specifically address the idea for better talent retention and acquisition?
Yes, our webinar series has become really popular this last year, which is another nice little benefit of what's happened is there's a lot more lifelong learners out there that are spending time in sharpening their own skill set. We recently did a webinar on the looming talent exodus that really unpacked a lot of this issue around the silver tsunami, as I was mentioning earlier about retirements. I think that would be a great one to consider. Overcoming virtual team fatigue is another one. We had one of our coaches who spent a lot of time working with executive teams in helping them rethink what does a team look like in a hybrid environment. That would be a great add-on talk. And then creating positive race relations at work. We spent a lot of time in the DE&I space too, and understanding and talking about diversity is an important element as we talk about the labor pool. And I think it's really important too to realize that if we can expand ourselves to being inclusive to all types of workers, you'll have more people knock on your door and say, I want to join my organization.
Yeah. So where can everybody go to learn more about the webinars, about your company and your services?
Well, you can reach us at dionleadership.com. We have a whole bunch of downloads for white papers, studies, and a replay list of all of our podcasts and webinars and blogs and articles.
Okay, great. I want to let everybody know that links to Dion Leadership's website will be included in this episode's companion guide. So be sure to unlock that today at projectionsinc.com/podcast. But right now, Steve, I want to shift gears a little bit. We've been in kind of a serious tone. It's time for what's sometimes my favorite part of the show, which is the Project HR lightning round. Are you ready for this?
I'll do my best.
All right. Our first question is a topic showdown. In this episode, we've been talking about the Great Resignation. So in your opinion, Steve, which of these fictional movie workplaces offers the most quittable job? Office Space's Innotech or Consolidated Companies, Inc., the office in 9 to 5?
Oh, gosh, I have to go old school on this one and say 9 to 5.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a great reminder of the challenge of inclusion in the workplace as well.
Yes, and how far we've come, right? So, Steve, tell me, what's the best book that you've read recently?
Oh, Think Again by Adam Grant. Great book.
Oh, okay. What's your favorite thing about the work you do?
I just love working with CEOs and CHROs and helping them craft a talent plan. They just get overwhelmed, stuck, they're not sure where to go, and I know how important it is. So being able to leave a call with them when you can see the passion on their face for wanting a better workforce, and then now they have a roadmap to get there.
So what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Well, this concept of people joining organizations and leaving bosses has really always stuck with me. I think that's helped me drive the way I've run HR functions over the years, our consulting practice, and really my personal leadership style.
And lastly, who or what inspires you?
Right now, I'm particularly inspired by my 3 children. They're young adults in the workplace, and observing them navigating the challenges of this pandemic, graduating college, getting into their jobs, the way they think about life and creating a fulfilling world for themselves is really inspiring. And I can bring that into the work that I do in our consulting business.
Yeah, for sure. You should definitely be proud of them. It's a lot right now. So, Steve, I want you to know how much we appreciate your insight into the leadership it'll take to navigate the Great Resignation. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Jennifer.
I also want to thank our Project HR listeners. Remember that this episode's companion guide also includes all the notes, links, and information you need to make the most of this great content. Grab your companion for this episode at projectionsinc.com/podcast. And if you're enjoying Project HR, we'd love to hear from you. Be sure to leave us a review and subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you're listening and you have a great idea for a future episode of Project HR, email us at projecthr@projectionsinc.com. That's all we have time for today. Let's make it a great day at work.